Deep, fast water crossings would have to be the most scary form of four-wheel driving as far as I'm concerned. Now I know Tyler and Berto have been waiting for me to do a reacts on their channel. Today's the day, let's dive into it.
We stood there for a good 20 minutes, debating, calculating and working out a plan. I do want to warn people to take stuff like this very seriously. It can get dangerous and life-threatening fast. We'd been speaking to a lot of locals, using reference points on the banks, the Tasmania Water Hydro website for water levels, watching a bunch of videos of four-wheel drives crossing it, and put a lot of thought into this. And we knew we were right on the limit today. We all made the call for Berto and Alan to go first, mainly due to the fact I had Zeph and Demi in the car, which if a vehicle does start to go, it's going to be a much more dangerous situation.
How are you feeling about it?
Well, looking at you, I've been watching your face the whole time and it's not giving me any confidence.
So I was going to say, we don't recommend doing this at all. Anything you're watching, don't do it. That's a full-on crossing, so we're going to get a recovery set up. So they got like winch rope at the other end on a tree. I'm going to get my winch rope ready in my window. And if I get caught at that bit, I'm just going to quickly chuck it out. They can hook me on and I'll pull over that last bit. I don't think it's enough to actually full float me sideways down the river. Seatbelts off.
So this river crossing is in a place called Tasmania, and it's on a track called the $1,000 track. Now Tasmania is on the bottom of Australia for those of you who don't know. The $1,000 track is a very extreme, fairly muddy four-wheel drive track. So Tyler and Berto and their mates and family have headed down there to get some content and have a time wheeling this track, which they have done before. So we're going to start by showing you Berto's drive across this river, which is fast flowing. It's not in flood, but it's certainly running at a high level. Let's dive into watching that bit and I'll come back and give you some thoughts.
Maybe so far. Going upstream. Yeah, we got this. Come on, come on. Phew! Hell yeah! Oh shit! That was hectic.
So that's pretty crazy and pretty wild. Now, I'm not here to roast the guys for doing this crossing. There's a heap of thoughts I just want to throw out there because as influencers, we have a responsibility to make sure that people who come behind us understand what's going on. And so that's what I want to help us with today. Now, at the outset, if you watch Tyler's video on YouTube, you'll see that he is well and truly aware of the risks of what he's doing here, and yet he's gone in and done it anyway. That's his call, obviously, but I'm going to unpack a few thoughts that we would consider, and I'm going to propose at the end of this video some ways that we could possibly do this safer if we had to cross this crossing. Quick interruption. Before we made the video live, we sent a link through to Tyler and I gave him a call so we could talk through the video that we were about to put up. So later in this video, Tyler jumps in and he gives us his perspective, which I think is excellent. So he'll be giving that to us a little bit later in the video. So make sure you stay and hear what he has to say about this whole thing. A little bit about the 80 series we've just seen cross the river. As I understand it, that's running a 37-inch tyre. Earlier in the video, you can see that the tyres are aired down considerably. It will be twin locked, and it's also very heavy, and it's been cut into a tray back. So all of these factors are key reasons why he was successful in getting across the river. 37-inch tyres means that the vehicle's lifted. It's got a higher centre of gravity as well. He's probably got a fairly decent suspension lift in there. So all of that means that there's less vehicle in the water. Therefore, there's less water pressure being applied to the side of the vehicle. That is all beneficial. Aired down 37-inch tyres, it means that we're going to have lots of traction. He's going to have both diff locks on. That's, again, in his favour. The next thing is he's got raised air intake, so his engine, which is a diesel by the sounds of it, is not going to have any electrical issues. Even with a petrol 1FZFE, which came out in the 80 series, your chances of having electrical issues are relatively slim. But being diesel, he's definitely got a lot going for him in that case. From a experience point of view, do you need to be a competent four-wheel driver to do this? You need to be competent. You don't need to be the best four-wheel driver on the planet to get across a crossing like this. You got to know some basics. You got to know how to maintain throttle. You got to know how to keep your composure in a relatively scary situation, which Berto did. He kept his composure. He didn't start getting crazy and doing wild things. He just let the vehicle eat, find the traction and move across. I wanted to throw another thought in there around the whole idea of environmental. People go, oh, you're environmental vandals there. There's only one area where I could think that's an issue. You see, in the actual crossing, that river is moving rocks, it's moving sand, it's moving gravel. The actual vehicle going across there has absolutely no impact on the riverbed. Like within minutes of the vehicle going through, you wouldn't even be able to see where it had been through. The only place you could possibly say there was any environmental impact is on the exit. Good practice is to stop and let the water drain off the vehicle and then drive away. They didn't do that, but that's the only thing I could see from an environmental perspective. So let's dive into Tyler's crossing. So he's in his GQ. Again, this is a well-built vehicle. He's got all the fruit, he's got everything going for him. I'm not sure what size tyre he runs. It's either 35s or 37s. He's twin locked, he's got suspension, and he's got a fair amount of experience as well, but he's a full body wagon. Therefore, he's going to have a lot more flotation than the tray back ute would have had. Later in the video, I'm going to start talking about some other elements about river crossings and fast flowing crossings. But let's watch Tyler's drive because he has something interesting happen halfway through. It's right about there. You see he stops. Now, this is the trouble with fast flowing water. You don't know where the rocks and holes are, so you're just hoping for the best. Now, in this moment, he's hit something. It could be an old log, it could be a rock, it could be any number of things, but it's brought the vehicle to a stop. What I'd suggest in this moment is instead of keeping on wheel spinning, which you can see Tyler does, I'd get off the power because the last thing you want to have happen is you diff out in the riverbed. Saying that, should you diff out, you've got water pressure going to help you get out of that situation. But let's watch what Tyler does next because it's exactly what you should do.
We're not floating, we're not going anywhere, we're just stuck. I think we're stuck on a rock. Good your wheels. That was stressful.
That's wild, man. I tell you, I wouldn't want to do that crossing. I'd just be, yeah, that'd be nerve-wracking. Now, after he got bogged, he backed up, cleared the bogging situation, and then got going again. And that was perfect, really good. Now, towards the end of the crossing, around about the 10-minute and 39-second mark, you can hear that the adrenaline is starting to go, and this is where composure becomes so important in these sorts of situations. The engine revs are rising because Tyler's adrenaline is absolutely pumping at this moment, and I don't blame him. I'd be the exact same. I think any of us would be. And what's happening is he's starting to really increase his engine revs. Now, I don't know what gear he's in, but I suspect it to be maybe second low, maybe third low. I think he runs reduction gears in his transfer case. But he's bringing those engine revs up and up and up. There's two risks in this situation. One risk is that as you bring those engine revs up, your fan runs a greater risk of sucking through the radiator. Now, the viscous coupling has already been cooled down, so it's a minimal risk, but it is still a risk that you want to be aware of, and the best way of mitigating that risk is by keeping your engine revs low. The next reason you don't want to get excessive wheel speed is it's going to start to dig under the water because you're pushing against all of that weight of water, so you'll start to wheel spin. And you don't want to have a situation where you're digging down faster than you're pushing forward, because obviously you can get bogged and get into a situation. So again, once you find that place where you're getting through the water, you're doing the job, you just want to hold the revs there. Don't get carried away with keeping on revving. As they're crossing the river, you can see that both the vehicles end up facing upstream. And the reason this happens is the rear of the vehicle will tend to be lighter, and it's exposed to the water pressure longer, so it tends to pivot on the front of the vehicle and pivot you around that way. Now, if you get to an angle, it kind of works for you. If you know anything about sailing, you do what they call a broad reach in sailing, which is where you sail across the wind, and the boat will go. It's actually the fastest point of sailing, and it's because of the angles, the way the wind hits the sail and it comes off the sail. A similar effect is happening here, where the water flow comes down, pushes on the side of the vehicle, and kind of pushes the vehicle across the crossing. So it can work to your favour, and it can actually help you get across. What you don't want to have happen is the vehicle goes fully straight onto the oncoming water, because then you're going to have to go forward against the water flow and against the full water pressure, and that's going to be harder for you to do. So both of these vehicles are significantly modified, and they've both got big suspension lifts and upgraded tyres. So there's an awful lot of water pressure that is going under the vehicle. But if you were in a lesser vehicle, and for me, any of my vehicles would be a much lesser vehicle, the water pressure on the side of the vehicle is huge. But you think about when you stand in water and the pressure on your legs, how hard it can be to stand up. Well, your vehicle has to withstand all of that, and it's only got 4 tyres as a contact patch to resist that. Add into that the fact that the vehicle will want to float. A standard GQ Patrol, I believe they will float at about 950 millimetres, or about 3 foot of water. The back of the vehicle will float and you'll be able to push it around. That's not very deep. So obviously these vehicles are going to be capable of deeper water crossings than that, but it's really important to be aware of it for your own vehicle and water crossings. Let us know in the comments what you're seeing about this crossing. Would you drive it with confidence, or would you be like, no, not going anywhere near it? I know that I'm not going to get all of the information and possible learnings from this video, so let us know in the comments down below what you're seeing. I want to talk about some other considerations after this, but how could you cross this crossing easier? Now, this may not work, and the fellas may well have considered this, but one of the things I would have been doing is seeing if it's possible to come out of the crossing, turn upstream, drive upstream a certain distance, and then come downstream towards the exit. And the reason is I'll then be driving with the flow of water, and it will be easier to get across the crossing. But that may not work because it may be just a deep hole up there, but it's worth considering. That could be a way you cross it. The next thing is planning for the recovery. I don't know how much planning went into what are we going to do if it all goes wrong? If Berto ends up down in that deep crossing below the exit, if he ended up down in there, that looked like deep water. What's he going to do? How do we get him and his mate out of the vehicle? How do we recover the vehicle? These are things you want to consider before you even go into the water. Now, the second thing that I'd be looking at doing is I would have a rope or a winch extension straps attached to the back of the vehicle all the way back to the shore. And the reason for this is if the vehicle gets stuck, we're going to have a tether or a rope from the vehicle all the way back to shore. So that tether is going to need to be able to basically cross the whole river. So it could need to be quite long. You can use winch ropes, you can join together extension straps, you'd use snatch straps, you could use a number of different things, but you basically want to get that distance. The reason that's going to be beneficial is if the vehicle's really stuck, people are going to be able to walk along that rope. It's going to give them something to hang on to so they can get through the fast flowing water and get back to safety. And the second reason we want that, it may actually give us options for doing the vehicle recovery. But at the end of the day, you're going to need enough recovery gear to get across the crossing. I was reading the comments on the Facebook page and the YouTube channel of this video, and I thought there was a really important point made, which I never would have thought of. The guys were wearing waders, like vinyl fishing waders, but the point was made, if you fell over in the water and those waders filled up with water, you'd be dragged under or carried away. And I think that's a really important thing to be aware of. I never would have thought about it. So just throw it out there, be aware of using waders in fast flowing water and whether that's a wise thing to do. I honestly don't know, but it sounds good to me. Let me know if you agree with that. The next point is seat belts. A lot of people have the habit of taking their seat belt off when it comes to a water crossing. I don't see the logic in that. I think you're better off leaving it on. The reason I say that is you don't know what you're driving through under the water. You could all of a sudden be driving along and hit a big rock and the vehicle lurches, or hit a log and you come to a sudden stop or whatever. You're not as secure in the seat, and therefore you don't have as great a control of the vehicle if you're in that situation. And the argument against this is, well, you don't want to get trapped in the vehicle with your seatbelt on. You're not, I just don't think that's a risk, because let's face it, it takes you nanoseconds to push the button and take the seatbelt off so that you can get out of the vehicle. So I don't think that's a fair and reasonable argument. That's my thoughts. Let me know in the comments down below. The next comment though is about leaving your windows down. I agree with this because that allows you to get out of the vehicle quick and easy rather than having to wind a window down, or in the case of electric windows, they may not go down. So I do agree with that. The caution there is, and we've seen this at times, is where the flow of water comes over the window and into the vehicle. Generally speaking, you know, you might lose a few things, but a lot of modern vehicles have ECUs and that down low in the vehicle, under seats and stuff like that. So you may end up with some electrical gremlins, but I generally agree with the idea of leaving your windows down in deep water crossings. Okay, let's get down to probably the bit where people go, oh, stop being a sook, Matt. You do you, I'll do me. I'm just here trying to help people understand the risks that can be involved in four-wheel driving and learn from it. Now, as influencers and people who create content, and I'm one of those people, I think we do have a responsibility to set a responsible example. And I think that there's some things in this video which could be questionable in that space. Let me just raise them and I'll let you guys discuss and decide for yourselves what you think of these. So the first is, when you have success at a crossing like this or some extreme obstacle, it emboldens you and those who watch your video to do the similar sort of activities. Now you might get away with it once, you might get away with it 2, 3, 10 times. But at some point in time you may not get away with it. What are the consequences? And that's where I think wisdom comes in, is counting the consequences and deciding whether you really need to do that particular thing. I'm all about getting in there and having fun and so on, but I do like to mitigate the consequences. For me personally, I wouldn't do this crossing unless I absolutely had to, and going to make a video is not enough had to for me. I'd go and film somewhere else, but each to their own. But the other considerations, and I think this is really important to consider, is Tyler has responsibility to his family, in particular his young son, who probably can't swim in fast flowing waters like that. So should Tyler have got into dire situations, let's say the vehicle rolled onto its side, what happens to Zeph in that situation? How is he cared for? And I think that's a really important consideration. And that's assuming that the rest of the adults that he's responsible for can swim and can get themselves to safety. Now I know Tyler, and I know he's a good dad, and I know that he's not intentionally going out to do things that would harm his family. But there's a good question to be asked in that situation. The next consideration is, should you get into a situation where you've got a vehicle stuck and there's people stuck in there and you just don't have the capacity to get them out, you now have to endanger the lives of rescuers SES or fire brigade or flood rescue specialists, whoever it might be, who have to come into that situation to do the rescue. And is it fair on them and their families for you to impose that on them just when it's really a decision you didn't have to make? I get accidents happen, but this was probably not really an accident. It was more maybe coming towards that. We didn't really need to do it, but we wanted to make a cool video, so we did it anyway.
Hey everyone, Tyler here from the Tyler Thompson YouTube channel, which is where that video came from that Matt has just been talking about. So he did send me the link for his Reacts video before he posted it and said if I wanted to share anything myself, have a look at it, whatever, then feel free to do so. So I thought I'd jump on here, share a couple of things from my perspective. Starting with what Matt said, generally I agree with it all. I feel like it was pretty fair of the things we did right and the things we did wrong and could do differently next time. Definitely things like wearing waders in a situation like that. Shouldn't have been wearing waders. Having a rope on the back of the vehicle. We did talk about that. It was borderline whether we had enough rope or not, but ideally, yes, you definitely would have a rope on the back of the vehicle. And you could see at the other side when Matt was talking about I started to accelerate and rev too much, definitely. That was, as Matt said, like I was getting near the end, it got to that deep bit and I just wanted to go out of there, get out of there, but that extra revs doesn't really help or achieve anything. In regards to that crossing and us deciding to go across that crossing, there was a lot of thought, due diligence, things that we did in preparation that didn't make it into the episode that I just didn't share. And that was things like we flew the drone up over the crossing before and surveyed it, you know, made sure you could see the ground the whole way through, made sure there was no big holes that had formed, no logs across it, anything that was gonna majorly catch us up as we drove across it. We're using the Tasmanian Water Hydro website, which has water flows, which all the locals use, and sort of reference that to where you can and can't cross it and where others had crossed it before. And watched numerous videos of vehicles crossing that and used reference points on the banks as to when other vehicles got across that and couldn't get across it. Matt brought up the idea of content creators like myself have a responsibility for the public, influencing them in ways where they can make a decision that might not be the greatest, and 100% agree with that. I think it's great that Matt makes these videos to educate people and share, you know, pros, cons, do's, don'ts, and how dangerous a situation like this could be if you don't know what you're doing. That's why in the video I tried to make a point a few times that stuff like this is very dangerous and we really don't recommend people doing it. And then the third and final point I want to mention, which is the one that's probably the most serious, and that is regards to having Zeph in the car. And honestly, I don't think it was a great idea at all, and I accept responsibility for that. It's something that I hope I wouldn't have to do again, or something that I take very lightly at all. The only thing I'm going to say is it was a tough decision. I know Matt mentioned in his video about us wanting to get content. At that point, it's not about getting content. It's about what is the best way out of this situation. Because we've got one vehicle on either side of the river. I did not want to ask them to come back. They'd safely made it across. I felt confident that I could safely make it across too in a much heavier vehicle, and a vehicle that's just as capable. And if we turn around and go back, there's two bad crossings we had to get across the other way as well. So it was a tough call. None of it was great at that point, but yeah, just none of it ideal. Like obviously we are out there filming it all and continue to film it all, but we're not gonna risk our lives, or I'm not gonna risk my son's life just to get the shot. Like yes, ideally, we did want to keep going forward to get out that way and film the remainder of that track. But it was also what we thought was the best decision and safe enough to continue to do. It's something I've thought about a lot after the trip and continue to think about now as well. Like that's the decision we made at the time and what we thought was best at the time. I've sort of tried to reflect on the situation and go, you know, would we do the exact same thing again? Was that the smartest? Was that the safest choice? I'm still not 100% sure. But that's why it's great to have these discussions, have these videos, and Hopefully, I don't have to be in that exact same scenario again. I will finish it up there though. Thank you to Matt, and I appreciate him giving me the space to share my own thoughts, have my own say in this video that he's made. And hopefully myself, Matt, and all the viewers can learn something from this and be better equipped for a situation like this if it were to occur in the future. And yeah, just everyone take this stuff very seriously, because we do.
So the takeaway from this video is really to be well aware of your skill set, your vehicle's abilities, and whether you really need to go and do a certain trail. I'm Mad Matt. Stay safe on the trails.